What is up, Duelists? Super Insane 18 here, and today we are going to be talking about one of the meta-relevant threats for this format, and that is of course going to be Crystron K9. Now, this is a deck that we have seen have a large amount of competitive success, topping both regionals and YCS level events, so let's show you guys the build. Of course, we are on 3 copies of our Sulfidor. This is one of the most important cards in the deck, and you want to make sure that you always have at least 1 or 2 of them in your deck. So playing it at a maximum number of copies is very important to ensure that you can both see it and have it available in your deck. We are then on 2 Sulfefnir. Now this is one that I see some people cutting down to 1. However, it's kind of in the same boat as the Sulfidor. You kind of want to have at least 1 of them in your deck. So I don't really see why you would only play the 1 of, because then if you draw it, it really kind of locks you out of some of your combo lines. This is actually a card that I was considering bumping to 3, funny enough, but that's untested. I've been liking it at 2, just a thought to kind of have in the back of your mind. And then finishing off the Crystron lineup with some 1-ofs, we have our Smyger and our Tristaros. Smyger is essentially a 1-card starter for this deck, and Tristaros is very important, using both of its effects, actually, both the on-field and the graveyard effect, to wild levels of success, being able to extend your board even further. We have our Honorary Crystron in the Scrap Recycler. The reason this is an Honorary Crystron is because it essentially does the same thing as normal summon Smyger, and for the K9 combos as well, you can use it to great effect as well. Then onto the K9 cards, we of course have our 3 copies of Yugioh. This is kind of the heart and soul of the K9 package. Since your Sulfidor and your Sulfefnir are level 5s, you can utilize them with Yugioh to make absolutely insane boards. We then have our 3 copies of Izuna. This is less important than the Yugioh, but still very good because it allows you to play on your opponent's turn 0, as well as gives you some lines into hand traps, which we will go over in the dedicated combo video. Finishing off the K9 lineup, we have our 1 copy of Lupus and our 1 copy of Lantern. This is just super standard. Lupus is very good in pair with Izuna, being able to play on your opponent's turn, as well as Xyz and make your anything that has it as material untargetable, so that is very good. And then Lantern is for the recursion. Again, when we go in depth on the actual combo video, you will see that in action. Now we have a pretty decent size hand trap lineup. We are on 3 Droll and Lockbird. This is one of the only decks in the format that main decks Droll, and it's because of an interaction that we'll talk about a little bit more when we show you guys the extra deck. We have our 3 Ash Blossom because it's just the most generically good hand trap in the game. And then we have 3 Ghost Ogre. Now, Ghost Ogre is something that I put in place of Infinite Impermanence. I am of the opinion that Infinite Impermanence is very lackluster this format. A lot of times your opponent is playing on turn 0, which means you've already put stuff on your board, and so like if they try to summon Izuna on you, or if they're playing something like Draco Tail and they Fimena, you have cards on your board and you can't activate your Imperm, so it's not really great. Whereas something like Ghost Ogre can be used no matter what your opponent is trying to do, and I think that this is a very strong card in the format, being able to completely devastate Yummy. It's not as great into something like Draco Tail, but it's pretty decent into Vanquish Soul K9 as well, so this is my personal choice over Infinite Impermanence. Just want to kind of give you guys a little bit of a thought process behind that. We are on our 3 copies of Fubulos, of course, because you have to play Max C, and that's going to do it for the hand trap lineup. We have our 3 copies of Crystron Inclusion. This is another 1-card starter for the deck, as well as a very important combo piece. Both its on-field and graveyard effects are incredibly good, being able to search and to summon. And then we're actually on 3 copies of a Case for K9. This is something that I'm borrowing from the theory behind Vanquish Soul. You need the extra consistency. A lot of times here, you either need Jockle or you have Jockle, but you don't have another level 5. So the Case for K9 is one of the best ways to do it. And of course, we're also playing it in tandem with the Chaotic Elements, which of course can search for both the Lantern and the Jockle as well. So by maxing out on 3 copies of each of these, we're essentially playing 6 Rotas in our deck, which is very good for consistency. And in a format where Droll isn't really super heavy, which is ironic because we're playing Droll in this deck, it's very strong. We have our 1 copy of Foolish Burial, again, because this is essentially a 1-card starter. And then we have our 3 Forbidden Droplet, which is As explained in my Yummy videos, my personal preference over Infinite Impermanence for effect negation, because if your opponent is playing on your turn 0, you're able to actually use the Forbidden Droplet to stop what they're doing, but it plays a little bit of double duty in this deck as well, because both the Sulfefnir and the Sulfador are able to use their effects whether they're in your hand or your graveyard, so you're not even losing advantage when you use the discards off of the droplet. Finishing off the main deck, though, we have the Crystron Cluster as the 42nd card, so let's show you guys the extra. The extra deck is pretty straightforward. There are a couple of flex spots, and we will talk about them as we go. The first and foremost, we are on our 2 Synchros, the F.A. Dawn Dragster and the Crystron Elasceletus. Dragster is one of your end board pieces, as well as something you can make during your opponent's turn if you happen to end with your Tristaros on board, and Elasceletus is a phenomenal extender, being able to recur your resources from your graveyard and then summon from your banish when you destroy it, which you will see in the combo. But then we have kind of the big end board pieces for the deck. Of course, we have our Cyber Dragon Nova and the Cyber Dragon Infinity that we will overlay on top of the Nova. This is super important because it's just an Omni Negate, and you can make it very easily since you're playing machines and level 5s. So really important to have, and you can actually use it to play around some of your opponent's side deck cards as well, which we will go over when we're doing the combos. Now we have one of our flex spots, which is the Artifact Durendal, and this is one of the reasons that I think this deck can play Droll to great effect. A really funny interaction, if any of you were around for like Trickstar format or anything like that, is that if you activate the Durendal effect to shuffle the hand, and then Droll becomes live after Durendal has been activated, you actually still have to resolve as much of Durendal as possible, meaning your opponent will shuffle their hand back into the deck and draw 0 cards. Now, why is that good? Because we have Mulch Armies. Mulch Armies are cards that add from deck to hand, albeit by drawing, so if your opponent ever Mulch Armies you, and you happen to have a Droll in your hand, you can essentially turn skip them in a much more oppressive way than something like Paradise Smasher. By going into the Durendal, they will draw off the Durendal. In response to the draw off of their Mulch Army for the Durendal summon, you'll go Chainlink 1 Durendal to shuffle their hand and make them draw the same amount. Chainlink 2 is going to be the Droll and Lockbird, which will then go into effect, resolving as much as possible from the Durendal, shuffling their hand, and getting no return. And then on top of that, you can go into your Cyber Dragon Infinity, so they're getting 1 card that they're drawing for turn. You have 1 negate, and that is pretty much an FTK. Then we have our Chronomaly Vinmana, our Imperial Princess Konkiri, and our Infinitrack Riverstormer. Now, Vinmana is another piece of end board material that you can use, but it's also something that you can make on turn 1 to be able to, or turn 0 rather, when you're using your Canine effects to be able to negate cards that your opponent uses. The Konkiri is important for some of the combos, being able to reborn your level 5s, and the Riverstormer is actually one of the most important pieces because it can search you for your Scrap Recycler, which then turns on your entire Crystron combo. We, of course, have our 1 copy of the Canine Ripper. This is so that we can search the rest of our Canine combo. And then we have our Paradise Smasher, which is, again, just another FTK, which there are some lines where you can do this even if your opponent doesn't hand trap you and still set up your full Crystron board. The final rank 5 that we have is going to be the Valen. This is something that you can make in tandem, or rather not in tandem, but instead of the Vinmana, depending on what you're against. Maybe a Book of Moon will be more potent than an Effect Negate, so it really just depends on what you're against and what your opponent is doing. But then the final Xyz that we're playing is, of course, the copy of Zeus. Because we play so much Xyz monsters, putting a Zeus online is very easy, and who doesn't like a good board wipe? Finishing off the extra deck, we have 3 Link monsters. Of course, we have our 1 copy of Clockwork Knight. This is so that you can actually do your 1-card combos by linking off your Smiger to put it in graveyard. That way you can then use it to search the inclusion. But it's also important for something like the Scrap Recycler, being able to reborn the Scrap Recycler and do its effect again since it's not once per turn. We have a Silo Hat Rabbit, which is not relevant in the main deck, but you are going to be siding the Apophis of the Swamp Deity, which is very good because it essentially becomes another Omni Negate as well. And finally, we have our copy of SP Little Knight, which is really important for your Game 1 combos, and it's just a phenomenal utility for the deck. So let's show you guys the combo. Before we get into the combo, I just want to remind you guys that we will be doing a dedicated combo guide for Crystron in the upcoming days, so make sure that you stay tuned for that. But for this video, we are going to show you the 1-card combo, and that is going to showcase the Crystron inclusion. So here's how it works. We're going to start off by activating our Crystron inclusion, which will allow us to add a Crystron from our deck to our hand. Of course, that means we are going to add the copy of Sulfador. The The reason we're adding the Sulfidor is because we can actually use the Sulfidor effect to summon itself from our hand by destroying a Crystron card we control, getting rid of our inclusion. On summon, the Sulfidor is able to send 2 Crystron cards from the deck to the graveyard, so we are going to send our copy of Smyger as well as our copy of Sulfefnir from the deck to the graveyard. We can use the graveyard effect of the Smyger, banishing it to add a Crystron spell or trap. That is going to add us our copy of Cluster, which is important because it will allow us to then utilize the Sulfefnir in graveyard. Sulfefnir can summon itself from the graveyard by discarding a Crystron card, which is where that Cluster comes in handy, but then it has to destroy a card, and we are actually going to destroy itself. The reason that we're using it to destroy itself is because it does have a destruction effect, allowing us to then special summon a Tristaros from our deck. Now that we have the Tristaros, which is a tuner, and our Sulfidor, we can go ahead and synchro both of these off into our copy of Ellie Skeletus, which will activate its effect on summon to recur one of our Crystron cards, getting us back the Cluster so that we have it as an interruption during our opponent's turn. We can then utilize the Tristaros in our graveyard, banishing it to target and destroy the Ellie Skeletus. This will allow us to summon 2 Crystrons from our deck, which are going to be another Sulfidor and another Sulfefnir. We can then activate the destruction effect of Ellie Skeletus, reborning the Tristaros back from our banishment, and now we're good to set up our Omni Negate. We can go ahead and overlay the Sulfefnir and the Sulfidor into our copy of Cyber Dragon Nova, and then we can overlay the Cyber Dragon Nova into our copy of Cyber Dragon Infinity. Now, the last couple things we want to do to finish off our turn is utilize the graveyard effect of the inclusion, banishing it from the graveyard to reborn out our copy of Sulfidor from our grave, and that gives us another level 5 that we can use with our Tristaros to perform another Synchro Summon. This is going to summon out our copy of F.A. Dawn Dragster. We can then set our Cluster and pass our turn. So this was a 1-card combo, meaning that there are still 4 cards in our hand. We have an Omni Negate, a Spell Trap Negate, and then the Cluster for a pop, plus whatever we have in our hand, and pretty much guaranteed follow-up because we have the Smyger, we have the Tristaros, we have the Sulfidor, so definitely ways to continue playing as well, and that is one of the weakest combos, believe it or not. That's still 3 interruptions with 4 in hand. The combos only get stronger from here. And there you guys have it. That is going to be my Crystron K9 deck profile, as well as a combo to tease the upcoming video for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you know the deal. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like, comment, and share with your friends, and as always, don't forget to check out the channel sponsors, both Dueling Guard and Imperium Duelist, with the links in the description down below. You can not only get a discount on your purchase, but help to support me and my channel so that I can continue to bring you guys this amazing content. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.